This week, state lawmakers gathered in special session to wrap up the budget, and they did it with a cloud of uncertainty over the Speaker of the House, Chris Donovan, who appeared on this program last week. And with us to talk about this today is the House Majority Leader, Brendan Sharkey, Democrat of Hamden, and potential future Speaker of the House, and House Republican Leader Themis Klarides of Derby. And folks, thank you so much for being with us today. And I'll ask you both, whoever wants to jump in can certainly take it. There are a lot of voters who are saying, what is the need for a special session? Why can't the work get done during the regular session?
Well, I guess I should start. Most of what we did in the special session was what's called an implementer, because folks at the state level may not fully understand that when we do a budget, it's really just numbers on a piece of paper. So we need to do a bill that explains the policy and lays out how those numbers are to be spent. So that was essentially the business that we needed to complete during the special session. Unfortunately, during the regular session, for a number of different reasons, there was some delays in the last couple of days of the session, which meant that some of this business could not be done, and we really needed to get this done.
Do you agree?
I agree with the part that says we have to implement the budget. I mean, clearly that's a technical thing. It has to be done, and oftentimes it doesn't get done by the last moment of session. The problem I guess I have, and a lot of the Republican caucus had, was the fact that we did 344 bills during the regular session. And in these implementers, we did 122 different concepts, okay? Not just the issue of what needs to be implemented to get the budget done. And that was our issue. I mean, you need to do the implementers. The call of the special session said it's narrowly defined, and it should be narrowly defined. I mean, otherwise, why be in session during the regular session if we're going to do everything all in one day?
There were also complaints that Republicans didn't have a say in this whole matter, that they were shut out of some of the talks.
Well, as I said on the floor, keep in mind that, with all due respect to Themis and her party, the Republicans didn't vote for the budget, were not part of either in the biennial budget that we passed last year or the revisions that we did this year. It was a party line vote. They didn't really participate at the committee level or on the floor in terms of voting for it. So it kind of is difficult then, when that's the case and it's become a partisan issue, to then invite folks in who voted no to then participate in how that's actually going to play out. So that's kind of the reality. I think if we had had some Republican votes in favor of the budget, I think it would have been appropriate to have Republicans in at the table.
And you want to jump in?
Well, first of all, and I certainly don't agree with the fact that we didn't participate in the committee process. I mean, we are as much a participant as anybody else, no matter what letters after your name in the committee process. Just because we didn't agree with the budget, just because we didn't agree with the amount of spending and the amount of taxing that we've been doing in the past few years, does not mean, okay, well then you're not part of the process going forward. You know, we represent over 1 million people in the state, and we should be part of the process all along the way, whether we agree with it or not.
Yeah, there were a lot of people talking about Chris Donovan there this week. Certainly, it sort of cast a shadow over the whole process there because he wasn't involved in the entire process. What are the Republicans saying about this?
Well, you know, clearly the Speaker is involved in a situation now that is kind of separate from what we've been doing insofar as doing our legislative business.
But it affects the mood a little bit.
I mean, it certainly affects the mood, but we're there to do a job, and we did that job, and I think whether we agree or disagree on what was done or wasn't done, we didn't let that affect what we're elected to do.
And what about the Democrats?
Well, I think there's a certain sense of sadness in some ways, because anyone who knows Chris and knows how he's devoted his entire political career to exactly the opposite of what the accusation about his campaign operations are. Everyone knows that Chris has been living for and working towards good government his entire political career. So the fact that this would have occurred by staff people and would have allegedly who were involved in this is sad. It's sad for him. I think it's for those of us who know him. I think our hearts go out to him, because I think we're all. I don't want to speak for everyone, but I think everyone's very confident that Chris had absolutely nothing to do with this, obviously, but also that he deserves the benefit of the doubt, and it's a shame that this happened. You
know, we now know that FBI agents were at the convention, sniffing around, perhaps asking some questions, observing. Do you believe they were at the special session at all? At the Capitol?
I mean, I think clearly, I mean, they're undercover agents. None of us knew when they were around one way or the other. I mean, I agree with Brendan about, you know, how we feel about Chris and his integrity and his character.
You think he did nothing wrong then?
Yeah, I mean, you can only judge people on the way they have been with you and the interactions you've had, and he's always been a man of his word and honor. You know, whether we agree or we don't agree on the philosophies, you know, there's a whole different story. That doesn't mean he's not somebody we've respected and trusted.
Have either of you been contacted by investigators?
Yes, I was visited the same day that Thursday that several agents were interviewing a number of elected officials around the state.
The day the story broke?
Yes, that Thursday, yeah.
Before or after it broke?
Before. It was first thing in the morning. Dogs were barking and I was making breakfast.
And so they came to your house?
Yes.
And what did they ask you?
It was a little embarrassing because they asked about this bill called the Roll Your Own bill, and I thought they were talking about the medical marijuana bill, not the actual bill. It was a bill that was really, unless you were on the Finance Committee, it was very much on the fringes of our discussion. So I didn't really know much about the bill, and so they asked about that and asked about my relationship with Chris and whether there was any discussions about the bill at all, and of course the answer was no.
Did they seem like they were targeting him in your questions?
No, I think they just wanted to, my impression was that they wanted to see if there was any influence being asserted on legislators and leaders to either do or not do this bill. And frankly, there just wasn't any there. There was no conversations at all.
And did they talk to Republicans at all?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't spoken with, but there were certain other Republicans that were. But you know, it's interesting. Brenda mentions the Roll Your Own. That was, we give certain names to different bills, and you know, unless you're on that committee or had some involvement with it, I heard that around the building. You know, many times, roll your own roll. I just never really knew what it was, to be honest with you. I just never, because it was not in my committee. I'm not on the Finance Committee. It never came to the floor, so it just kind of, with hundreds of other bills, just kind of went its way and didn't get called.
You know, as you know, the Speaker was on this program last week, and there was some criticism of it afterwards. Some people said that he should have said more. Do you believe he should be saying more?
I think he's doing the appropriate thing. I know that there are those in the media and elsewhere who would like to see him say more. I think he said what he could say when he could say it. And I think he's trying to be deferential to the investigation that's ongoing.
I agree. I mean, certainly you can't judge what somebody should or shouldn't do because you're not in their shoes. I mean, it appears as if he's handling it the way he should be. And
the campaign responded. They criticized one of my questions. They said that it was a ridiculous question to ask the Speaker if he knew how many people were on his campaign staff. Do you agree with that? Is that a fair question?
I mean, I think it's a fair question. I don't...
Do you know how many have worked on yours?
I don't know. On my... It's kind of different with a state rep.
Sure.
Because you have a lot of volunteers, you have a lot of kids, you have different people that may be stuffing envelopes and that kind of thing. But in a congressional race or a higher race, you have people that are paid and you have people on your staff. So I would assume, not having done that, but I would assume being involved with it, it's more of a black and white who's there and who's not.
Ridiculous question or a fair question? I can take it.
Well, I think it's a great question because, as Themis, I think, was alluding to, there's a lot of folks on federal campaigns who are paid, a lot of volunteers who are like they're being paid but aren't really being paid. So as to how many may be on his payroll per se is, I think, difficult for I think, a particular candidate to answer. I think the other thing about the issue is the fact that what it seems from all the coverage on this that was really driving the alleged malfeasance here was a drive for money. And I think that's really what's unfortunate, because I think federal campaigns, unlike our state campaigns and what we've done on campaign finance reform here in the state, federal campaigns are different. It's all about the money. And yeah, personally, I would like to see less of the financial interests in our federal campaigns the way we've done it here in the state.
And a final question, you, of course, are the next Speaker unless the Republicans take over the House. Is that possible?
It's absolutely possible.
Always possible.
Absolutely.
Always possible, but it won't happen.
You heard it here today.
All right. Brendan Sharkey, Themis Klarides, thank you so much for being on the program. We appreciate it.